Hey guys, welcome to my channel Dapper Dash, where I provide tips and tricks on how to work with different business intelligence tools like Power BI, which is the one that we're going to be using today. Now, today we're going to be working with SVG Images, and specifically how do we take an SVG image from like a website and how do we import that into Power BI and bind it with our data to create a pretty unique visual. Now, before we get started, if you enjoy this video, hit like and subscribe. That'll really help my channel get moving forward. It'll help me prioritize time so that I can continue to deliver tutorial videos like this one. Thank you. Here I have a mock dashboard that I created. So let's pretend that I'm an analyst here at Dapper Dash, and I've been asked to create a dashboard for like a school, and the school has several different club organizations. Okay, there's the Nike Club, there's the Magic the Gathering Club, Curves, which is like a fitness for like a women's group. There's the Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout Club, and then there's the Dallas Cowboys Club, because every school has one. I have some pretty simple, just kind of dashboards or graphics here. I didn't want to add too much to a page because we really, we want to get right into how we're going to work with the SVG images. So what I'm being asked is, just to create some basic data visuals on how these clubs are doing. So here on the top right, we have the total number of participants, right? This is total club membership. And right now it's not filtered to any specific club. So this is for all, 5 of the clubs that we're looking at. And then here we have a club budget. So we can see that the budget is $3,900. And so far the clubs have spent, $1,800 of their $3,900 funds. So let's just browse through a couple of these. If we go through Nike, we can see the Nike is composed of 100 members, right? And this is their budget. And we can see Magic the Gathering, 157 members. Curves, 176 members. Fall Guys has 116 members, and they've almost used up all of their budget, which is weird because it's free. And then we have the Cowboys, 308 membership. It's the biggest membership because there's a lot of bandwagon fans. And we can also see that they haven't really used any of their budget because they don't seem to be having that good of a year. So one thing that we want to do is you can see our data set here on the right. In our data, if we kind of just go explore it, I mocked this up. You can see that we have total members, and we also have the breakdown of male and female members. Okay, what we want to provide our client is we want to provide a visual of how that male and female ratio is. Is it 30% males, 20% females, 50%? However, how many people in the Nike Club of this 100 are male or female? And we're just going to keep it at those two, just to to keep it simple. Now, there's a couple ways that you could do this within Power BI. You could create this. This is one way that I guess you could. I create this stacked bar chart kind of sideways, and you can just tack on, male and female numbers. You can turn on the data labels and maybe change some colors around just so it looks a little bit cleaner. And there we go, right? Maybe drop the background. And this would tell you, right? Here's our male to female numbers. We can also do this as a percentage if we really wanted to. And as we browse through, Magic the Gathering, 151 of the 157 members are male. Only 6 are female. Curves, quite the opposite, right? 164 are female. Only 12 are male. So this works, right? We can totally use this as a visual. But at Dapper Dash, we want to provide something a little bit more with an oomph. Right? We want to provide a cleaner, a nicer visual, something that really helps our dashboard stand out. So if we jump to this webpage, and here I found an example of what we're going to do today. This looks like maybe it was an Excel, an infographic, right? It has sort of this male icon and this female icon, and they seem to be filled up based on the proportion of, male, 55% male, 75% female. And so that's what we want to do with Power BI today. Now here what I want to do is I just want to show you the final result. This is what we're going to be building today. Okay, so here's our infographic. right? And as we click and as we filter through the different clubs, you can see 52% male, 48% female. Remember, we went back to Magic the Gathering, that was primarily male, right? 96% male, 4% female. The opposite with the curves. If we go to Fall Guys, 65% female, 35% male. And the Dallas Cowboys, 56% male, 44% female. So this is what our final result is going to look like. What I want to do is I want to walk you step by step exactly how I created this so that you can do this with any SVG image that you can find. So the first thing we got to do is we got to download our SVG icons. And so we're going to go to a web page that, at least that I found, where I was able to find these two icons. And so let's go there. So here we are at the website that we're going to use to gather our SVG images. It's called flaticon.com. You can register and become a member. Just some of the benefits is that you're able to save different icons into a collection in case you need to go back and grab them. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we're just going to search for our male icon. And we're going to go ahead and grab this one right here. So just click on it. And you can see that it gives you an option to download as an SVG. You can also download it as an image, but the image doesn't allow us to manipulate it in Power BI so that we can get that color effect and that fill effect. So if I click here on SVG, I have an option to download it for free. And keep in mind that because people and authors that are publishing their work out here, you should always give credit where credit is due. They make it available for us to download and use in our project. So go ahead and click free download. And I'm going to go ahead and save it in my tutorial file. And it says man SVG. Save. And then we're going to go and find our female one as well. And don't worry too much about the color that the icon is right now. That's one of the benefits that we have in SVG and being able to work with it, is that we can customize it as we want, right? So SVG here. Go ahead and download it. And girl. And so now we have our two images. So let's go back into our project and I'll show you how those work. Okay, so we're going to start to work with our SVG icons now. And we're going to start manipulating them so that we can get them into a point that we can finally transition them over into Power BI. So what I want you to do is I want you to start with the man.svg file that we downloaded. And I'm going to show you how the effect that we're going to create works. So I've set mine to open with Chrome. And if that's how yours is, I'm just going to double click it. All right, so here we have the icon. And this is going to be useful. So go ahead and hit inspect. And this is just going to show you the SVG code. Okay. So you're going to see that the icon, it's made up of a bunch of these like G tags. And these G tags are really just grouping tags. But I'm going to point you to this grouping tag here, because this grouping tag contains our entire image. You can see that if I hover over it, the entire image is highlighted. And this isn't actually just one image or one shape. This is actually made up of two different shapes. The first one is a circle that serves as the head, right? So here's the center of the circle at 256 and 51.2 with a radius of 51.2. And then we have this path that serves as the body of the male icon, right? And so these two shapes combined make up the male icon that we're going to be working with. So go back to where you have the file saved and go and edit it with whatever your text editor is. Mine, I'm going to be using Notepad++. Right, so once again, what you're going to see here is the exact same thing that you're seeing here, right? It's just, we're going to use this as a way to visualize what we're going to do in Power BI. So let's start to actually shape this up and then start to make it look better and tidier so that we can move it into Power BI. So you're going to notice a bunch of these open and closed G tags. There's nothing in between. Go ahead and delete them. The only thing we really care about is the G tag that is surrounding our image, which is this one here. So that's the only one that I'm going to leave there. I'm going to delete. We don't need these first two lines. One is just the text comment, and the other one is sort of like byte order marks or like a header. We can go ahead and delete those. And then we're finally left with this SVG tag. We don't need the version. We don't need the ID layer. We don't need this link, but we do want this XMLNS style thing. So we can go ahead and delete that. I'm just gonna bring these up into this row. We don't need this style background, and we don't need this XML preserve. Okay. So it seems like we've changed our SVG quite a bit. So I'm gonna hit save, but in reality, it hasn't done anything to it. So if we go back here, right, and we refresh the file, you'll see that we no longer have all these open and closed G tags. We now just have, why does that keep doing that? We now just have this one G tag, right? We have our SVG and we have our grouping tag that contains our circle and our path. Okay, so this is where we're gonna get started. So let's go back into the editor. And the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna copy this G tag and we're gonna paste it down here. And the reason why, and this is gonna be important in understanding how this visual works, is in order to achieve the effect that we want, we actually have to layer the exact image on top of itself. Because what we're gonna do is one image is gonna serve as the background, sort of like our background gray color, if that's what you're going for. And the other image is gonna serve as our fill image. So it's the image that's gonna be filling up with a color based on maybe the percentage of males in that club, right? So if it's 75%, we want it to fill up 75%. And if it's 10%, then we only want it to fill up 10%. And that concept is gonna be maybe unfamiliar to some of you, and it's going to be a little strange as we work through this. So before we actually get to coding a little bit more, I want to show you a demo on how this is going to work and why we need two images. Okay, so here I have just Paint 3D. I'm going to take a rectangle image, and the way that we achieve this effect, okay, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, but the color that you actually want to be doing the filling up, you would normally think of that as your foreground color, but that's actually going to be our background color. So we're going to set that to, let's just say green, right? Green, this is how much battery life is left in my fake battery here. We're actually going to set that to the background color. And what we're doing, right, in creating two copies of this image is this. We're going to create, this is our second copy right here. And our second copy, right, it's going to be a mirror image of it, except for this is actually going to be what would ideally be our background color. Okay, and the effect that we're going to go for with SVG is we're actually going to mask how much of this color we show. And it's going to look like the battery's filling up to 50%. The battery's filling up to 90%. Oh, the battery is only at 10% power, right? But in reality, the green color isn't what's filling up or going down. It's actually the background, the gray color. The gray color is either showing less of the green or showing more of the green. The green image is static, right? It's static in the background. It's actually the gray image that we change to show 90% full when really we're showing only 10% of the gray image. If we want to show that the battery is 25% full, we're actually showing 75% of the gray image, and that 75 going from here down, because that's the way that HTML works. The coordinates in HTML are kind of like a quadrant 4 in math, right? Your x-axis goes from left to right, but your y-axis actually starts from, I guess, where your origin would be, and it actually goes down instead of going up, right? If you were to go plot the point, x 100, y 500, you'd go over 100 points. And normally you'd go up, right, 500, but that's not the way it works in HTML. In HTML, you actually go down 500. And so that's actually what this is doing. This is saying go down 70. And the inverse of that is actually only show 30%. So hopefully that helps to visualize what we're doing here. So back to our code. let's fill in our colors. So we're going to type in style equals, and then we're going to do single quotes, because DAX and Power BI uses the double quotes to actually signify text, and that's not what we're going for. We're actually going for, we don't want it to confuse the DAX editor by using double quotes. So we just want single quotes. So we're going to do fill, and we're going to fill this one with green. Remember, this is going to be our color that's going to fill up our battery, but based on the example that I just showed you, it's actually our background color. It's our hidden background color, even though it looks like our foreground color. So we're going to go green, and then we're going to close parentheses there. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing with what would normally be, if you think about it, this would be the background, but it's actually our gray color, right? It's our color that's actually at the front that we're going to be masking or showing in order to cause that fill effect. So same thing, we're going to hit style equals fill, and this one we're going to fill it gray. What we're going to do is we're going to create our mask, right? Because we want to, remember, we want to automate this, or we want to put a mask over this so that when our numbers change, so does our mask. It reveals or hides more of the green color. So in order to do that, we're going to create this defs tag. And what this is this is going to allow us to define an object. All right, we're going to define an object that doesn't exist yet until we call it somewhere else. And the object that we're going to define is our mask. And in order to do that, we create what's called a clip path. And in clip path and SVG, this essentially serves as our masks. This clip path is going to limit this image here to, it's going to limit how much gray it shows or doesn't show. Remember the example in the paint, it's going to limit how much we reveal or how much we don't. So clip ID, we're going to call this our mask clip, because this is going to serve as our mask. We're going to close that tag there. We're going to close our clip path here. And so this is just declaring this mask. But what shape do we actually want? We actually want a rectangle. So we're going to go x equals 0, y equals 0. The width of our rectangle is going to be the width of our SVG image, which in this case it is 512, because our view box set those dimensions up. So everything that we actually do in working with our SVG image is going to be in ratio of 512. So if this right here was length of 100 and we wanted to, show 50%, we would go down to 50, right? Halfway. But because this is in terms of 512, everything that we do is going to be proportionate to 512. So we wanted to show 50% of the battery full, we would actually have to go to 226? I don't know, whatever, 256, sorry, 256. I don't know, someone go check my math there. So, okay, so going back here, our width is going to be the entire width of the image, but our height, that's what's going to be masking up and down. Our height, we're actually going to set, and for right now, because we haven't actually tied this SVG to our Power BI data, we're going to set an arbitrary number for our height. It has to be between 0 and 512, remember? So we're going to set 400. This means that we actually want to bring our mask down 400 units, or 400 pixels, I believe is what it's doing here. And then we're going to close this tag, our rectangle tag. The image that's going to be using this mask is going to be our gray image. Remember, this is the one that we want to mask. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more of text here. So after our fill gray color, we're going to add this clip dash path colon URL, and we're going to call our ID up at the top, which we named mask clip. And that's it. And we're going to hit save. So now if we did everything right, we should be able to go see the mask in action by refreshing this, and there it is, right? So we took our mask, and we brought it down 400 units. And I can edit it here actually. So what happens if we bring our mask down only 50 units, right? Well, then we can see that we only bring the gray color down to 50. And what that's actually doing is it looks like our green color is actually up 95, all right? 95% of it is full. When really all we're doing is we're only revealing 5% of our mask. Let's go, I'm gonna change the number one more time just so you can see it. Actually, it's probably faster just to change it here. Let's change this to about halfway, right? So we said 256. Hit save. Come back here and refresh it. And then now we're about halfway. So that's the effect that we're going for here. And so everything right now is pretty much ready to move it into Power BI. The only thing that we got to do is two things. One is make sure we change all of our double quotes to single quotes, because remember, the DAX editor in Power BI isn't going to want to work with it like that. So I'm actually going to do it like this. Replace with single quotes, replace all. Okay. And we're going to add one more piece of text at the very, very top. So right now our image is an SVG image. It's a web image, but we want to be able to have Power BI recognize it as a web image or call it as a web image. And in order to do that, we got to add this header tag that's going to go into our DAX editor. So data : image / SVG plus XML semicolon UTF-8 and then a comma. And there we go. We're done with this. And the next step now is to move this into Power BI and to actually bind our data and start bringing in the colors that we want and the data that we want so that we can animate this icon. Okay, so here we are back in Power BI. Now, before we bring the code that we've worked with, right, our SVG code into Power BI, we gotta add a few things. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna right click on our data and we're gonna create a measure. Right, and this measure is going to be the total number of male members. So we're going to just name this male total, and this is going to be a sum of our male column, and that's it, right? And you'll see why in a little bit. We're going to add another measure, and it's going to be similar, but it's going to be our female total. Sum of our female population, and we're going to hit enter. So now we have our male total and our female total. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to import that SVG image into Power BI. And in order to do that, we need to create another measure. That's right. So these images are going to go into our measures. And so this one we're going to name the male icon. Male SVG, that's fine. All right, shift enter, and we're gonna go grab our code. So copy our code here. Gonna go back into Power BI, and we're gonna paste it. Now, one thing that you wanna do is you wanna encapsulate all of this in quotation marks. And if we are missing something here, it's because of this, because we have. Remember we said that we want to try to change everything to be single quotes? That's because DAX treats double quotes as, and you actually don't need this, you can change it, but you actually don't need this X and Y. You just need the view box. So I'm just going to delete it. And change this to single quotes, single quotes. Yeah, so maybe before importing this in here, make sure everything is single quotes so that it's all one text once it's actually in our DAX in Power BI. And we're actually going to name this a variable. We're going to assign this a variable, var SVG or var icon. Let's just go var icon equals, and so there we go. So now we have our data imported. Now we could leave it as is, and I'll show you what that's going to do right now. So at the bottom, just go return icon and hit enter. So now if you actually want to see this displayed, what you're going to want to do is you want to actually drop in a table. Okay, so this is only going to work on a table. So if we go and we grab our male SVG, I thought we named it male icon. Male SVG, we're going to put that into our values. You're going to see a bunch of this code, right? So this is the code that we just copied. In order to fix that, remember that this code is actually going to reference an image, and it's going to reference a web image. So you have to change this measure. Instead of being uncategorized, you want to make this an image URL. So we're going to click image URL, and we're going to go back out. And there you go. So now you see that we have our male image. Just, we haven't, nothing's dynamic yet. We haven't really bounded this with our data. We just have the SVG image. So a couple things that if you want to do to correct it or to change it a little bit is, let's go into, okay, we're going to go into grid. We're going to up the size to the full max. This is 150. Okay, we're going to change the outline color just to be white. No horizontal grid. We're going to close this. Don't want a background. And in terms of column headers, even if it exists, I'm just going to change it to white for now, just so that we can see this. Okay. So there we go. We have our, there's our male icon image that we're going to use for this project. And we're going to center it here. Well, how do we bind this with our data? Okay, and so we're going to go back into our measure, our male SVG measure. Okay. And so here's where you get to define how you want to either color this or what sort of data is going to really impact what we're looking at here. Okay, so we're going to start defining our colors, and we're going to start defining how our data is going to be bound to this. So we can start off, first let's start off with, and we're going to name this, let's just define the percentage to be colored. To be colored in. Okay. So we're going to create another variable here, and we're going to call this percentage area. And our percentage area it's pretty simple. It's just going to be, right, in this case we're looking at the male SVG. So what do we want? We want our male total, which is, we created a measure for this already, and this is why we created the measure. The reason why is because if you select a particular club, then you can just reference the column, right? Because I already have the column totals in our data set. But if you want to look at all the clubs, you can't, you would have to sum the entire column, which is why we created a measure to just sum the entire column for us. And that's what the male total measure that we created is. Okay, so that's our numerator. And in our denominator, it's going to be our male total plus our female total. And we're going to close parenthesis, and we're going to close parenthesis, and that's it. So that's our percentage area, right? That's going to give us what percentage of the population that we're looking at is males. So, all right, so the next thing that we're going to define, we're going to define our colors. And this is up to you, right? Maybe you have a particular color scheme that you want to use. So this is where you could do that. The first thing it's going to be is our fill color, meaning the color that we want to see change and move depending on our percentage area. So in this particular case, I'm going to use a Dapper Dash blue for the male. Okay, and then we're going to define our background color as well. Right, and this is just what we would see in in our background. Kind of like when we did the demo, we showed that it was gray. In this particular case, I'm going to use a specific type of gray. Just want to make sure I got this right. Okay, so we've defined our fill color and our background color. Now what we want to do is we want to bind these into our SVG. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out where we used our color. Okay, so here's our first instance. We used a fill color. We just set it to green, right? So in this particular case, what we want to do is we want to break the string apart, and we're going to add our own variable into here. Okay, and the variable that we're going to add is our fill color. So there it is, fill color. So now fill color is replaced with the green. And then for our background, we want to do the same thing. We want to put in our background color and delete the gray. So we're going to go background color and then make sure we continue to close out the string. Okay, so now our fill color and our background color is in. If we really want to look at how this looks right now, we can just jump back into here. All right, so now we have my own designated gray color and we have this blue color, right? In the past we had green. So let's go back into our SVG here. And now we're going to define how the fill color changes depending on the percentage area that we want to color. Remember, all of that is done within our mask, the way that we mask things. And we used an arbitrary number of 400, right? That was just the number that we were using to test, and we kind of changed it around a little bit. But now we actually want to assign this to our percentage area. So remember, because of our view box, everything instead of being in terms of 100, everything is in terms of this width and height of 512. So it needs to be a percentage of 512. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little break here. We're going to bring in our percentage area, but remember, it has to be a percentage of, it has to be in 512. So a percentage of 512. So we're going to take 512, and remember, if this is 100%, then it's going to be the entire thing, 512. If this is 0%, then it's going to be a 0. But because our background color is actually sitting on top of the fill color, remember it's kind of inverted a little bit. Instead of the background actually being the background, it's actually in the foreground. We don't want to just multiply our percentage times, the 512 height. We actually want to do the inverse of that. We actually want to take 1 minus the percentage area. Okay, and if you're still not sure why, just trust me. I'm a doctor. And we're going to close this out. Now, if you're not sure why, normally you're right? If we wanted to show 70% full, you could multiply 512 times 0.7. But what that does, though, is instead of filling it up 70%, what that's actually doing is that's actually setting the ratio of how high our mask can be. And so if we go back here, just to give you a little, context into HTML, if we were looking at a grid, like a math grid, right, our X runs this way, right? Our X axis runs this way. But our Y axis, instead of running up and down like you would in quadrant 1, our Y axis actually runs down. So if we were trying to plot a point here, if you were to go plot the point X 100, Y 500, you'd go 100 points this way, and you'd actually go 500 points that way. So going back to Power BI, if this was actually 512, like 100%, if we did 512 times 1 to try to be 100%, instead of this filling up this way, our mask is actually filling up this way, right? So we want to do the opposite. We actually want to reveal the green color instead of hiding it. And that's why we're doing the 1 minus the percentage area. So hopefully that makes sense. If not, like I said, just trust me on this one. But I'd be glad to explain it separately. So other than that, I think those are the only variables that we really care about. I mean, we've already, we created our image separately for that we exported from our website. And now we've added in our data, right? Our male total as a percentage of, or as a ratio of the male total and female total. And we've tied it and everything looks good. So now we're gonna just hit enter and we're gonna go back. Okay, so we see, if we kind of browse through this, I think we're on curves right now. So we expect a low male percentage, but we expect a high percentage on Magic. Remember, like a 50-50 percentage on Nike, you know, a little over 50% on the Cowboys, and then we're below on Fall Guys. So you can see how this is changing, but we still want to be able to tie a number to this, right? We still want to be able to physically see what percentage it is. And that's why we're going to create just one more measure. We're just going to create we're going to call this male percent. And this is going to equal our male total divided by our male total plus our female total. And what we want to do is we actually want to, remember, we want to make this a percent. And I'm going to just, I don't want to show any decimals. Okay. So now we're going to bring in a card to represent this visual, and we're going to drag in male percent. So there we go, 35%. Maybe you want to clean this up a little bit, delete the category, sure, word wrap, shrink this down a little bit, and place this right below. And maybe drop the size of the text in case, you know, we get to 100. Okay, so there is our percentage. Now if we go back to Magic, 96%. If we go to Curves, 7%. Back to Nike, 52%, and down to the Cowboys, 56%. Or if we go look at our overall population, perfect 50%. So that's how we've done the male SVG image. You saw how we brought it in. Remember that when you're working with this, you have to set this as a data category of image URL. Otherwise, you're just going to get the text. But anyway, that's it for the male icon. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in the female icon. What you can do is you can actually go into our male SVG. Just copy the whole thing. Make sure you copy it. We're going to add a measure. This one's going to be our female SVG. There we go. Now, this is going to return the exact same thing for the male. Remember, we actually got to change this to be our female total because we don't want the male total as our numerator. The other thing that you want to do while you're fixing this is you want to change your fill color. In this particular case, I'm using the blue color, but maybe I want to use like a purple color. I don't know. So that's a purple color. Now, remember, the male icon follows this SVG path. This is unique to the way that the male icon looks. All right, so here's our girl SVG. Remember, we've been working with the male SVG. So we're going to edit this in Notepad++. And the female SVG follows a slightly different icon, and it actually follows a slightly different circle too. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy the path. We're going to go and paste it over the male path. Okay, and then the other thing you want to copy is the circle. All right, the circle is slightly different. You'll see that the radius, the center points are slightly different than the male icon. So you do want to change this. We're going to copy it over our circle. And remember what I told you about DAX treating double quotes, right? That's how you separate text. So we got to change these to single quotes, so we're going to have errors. So change this to single quotes. Change these to single quotes. Okay, so now we have our fill color defined. We've changed the path and the circle, right? Our SVG image is now the female image instead of the male icon image. And everything else looks good, right? We changed our numerator. We should be good to hit enter. And you'll see that now we've created our female SVG. So same thing, if you want to grab a table and add it and everything, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to copy this one and paste it. Right, that way I don't have to do any formatting. And we're just going to replace the male SVG with the female SVG. Remember, keeping in mind that this right now is a text. We have to still change this data category to reference an image URL. So there's our image URL. We're going to do something similar here. We're going to paste it, kind of just copy it, right? Be efficient with what you're doing. And instead of the male percentage, now we're going to create the female percentage. Female percent is going to equal our female total divided by our male total plus the female total. Hit enter. We're going to change this to be a percent, and I'm no decimals. Now we go back to this card, and instead of male percent, we're going to switch this to female percent. In the case of 50-50, right, it's still 50%. But once we start browsing through, right, 52 to 48, 96 to 4%. And we can see that kind of just copying the code over but changing the path seems to have worked. Fall Guys, and then finally the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, that's the presentation. This is, the Dapper Dash dashboard for the clubs here. And now I have something that I could present to my client that honestly, going back to the stacked bar chart example, looks a lot better. I mean, it just does. There's nothing wrong with doing this, and if you've done this before, that's great. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this. I'm just saying that being able to work with a custom image kind of adds a little bit more of like a personal touch, right? It adds a little bit more glimmer or glitter or whatever to the presentation. It stands out a little bit more. This is still not bad, right? It still tells me 172 to 136, but this right here, right, this looks a lot better. It looks a lot cleaner, and it looks dynamic. It looks nice. So we wanted to do it the Dapper Dash way, and we wanted to add our SVG images. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment. If I went too quick through anything, I'd be more than glad to respond to some of the things that I've done here. If you saw something that I did great, please let me know. If you saw some stuff that I did terrible, that you're like, hey, you could have done this so much easier, please let me know. I'm always open to feedback. But yeah, this is my SVG example, and thanks for watching.